you are not stuck with the mental health you have, and yet it's going to change at the pace of a garden, not a computer. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're serious about this project, you've got to cultivate this thing for years. To me, that is now the best news I've ever heard, because I want to tell anybody with trauma, anybody with addictions, anybody with mental health patterns, that you're working alongside the master gardener named Jesus, who knows what shalom looks like.
Welcome to 3%. We're your hosts, Jamie Haig.
And I'm Blake Roberts.
We're two best friends, fathers, husbands, and just two guys trying to figure it out.
We're also therapists, which is probably a pretty important part.
That's true.
And we believe that at our best, people are 97% honest with themselves and others. And it's that hidden 3% of emotions, needs, desires, and behaviors that we keep to ourselves that keep us bound to shame and loneliness, from which many of our issues stem.
Each week on this podcast, we'll interview leaders in the fields of psychology, theology, arts, and athletics to explore holistic masculinity. We're not here to tell you the man you need to be, but we are here to help you explore what gets in the way of being the man you want to be.
We're going to help you develop courage and give you the tools to share your 3% in the relationships that matter most, so you can more deeply connect with yourself, God, and others. So, pull up a chair.
Let's get into it.
So let's be honest, let's be honest, let's be honest, let's be honest, won't you be?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the 3% Podcast. We've got a pretty ambidextrous guest on today. We have Justin Whitmel Earley, who is a lawyer, an author, a speaker, a dad of 4 boys. We were just joking before we hit record, 7 to 13. Is that right?
You got it. You got it.
So there's lots of roughhousing going on. You may have seen Justin on Instagram. You may have read one of his books. He's got a few books that have been really impactful, Made for People, The Common Rule, and then one that I think is, at least in my circles, has been most known as Habits of the Household, which I've got right here. Practicing the Story of God in Everyday Family Rhythms. Super practical, really encouraging book that our podcast editor, who's going to be watching this, was telling us like how excited he is for us to talk to you, because he's been so impacted by your work. And
he's recently been doing the praying for his daughters first thing in the morning.
Yep.
He was talking about your impact positively on him when we told him you were coming on.
Well, I'm tipping my hat to him and other listeners right now who are reading. I love to hear it.
Yeah. More reading real books, right? And his newest book, which will actually just be released about a week ago of this episode airing, so you can go ahead and get it. The Body Teaches the Soul, which we are really excited to talk about, and it kind of goes with our theme that we've been exploring lately of what does it mean, and how do we foster a healthier relationship with our bodies to ultimately have a deeper connection with God and with each other. And I'm really excited to have Justin on. He's, like I said, done a little bit of my research before getting on here. I learned that you were a missionary in China for, I think, 5 years after college.
Yes.
And so we've got missionary to lawyer to author. I'm very curious about the kind of your story a little bit, but one question I had kind of before we jump into even talking about the book is, you do have this kind of public persona. A lot of people follow you. A lot of people learn from you and apply the wisdom that you've shared. And I'd be curious for us and for our listeners, in order to have a deeper understanding of Justin, what would be one of the earlier origin stories or something that would help us understand you more?
That's good. I always am fumbling around with a way to get listeners or readers or followers on social media as close as they can to realizing that I'm actually am a regular person like you who fumbles around in life. I try to tell as many of those stories as I can in my books so that people know and understand that. But maybe one insight would be, in my mid-20s, I was a missionary in China who thought that he might go into ministry. I was debating a seminary degree. I was thinking about maybe becoming a writer and getting an MFA. I started to feel called to law school, but my life then was like quite bohemian. I'm living in China. Like my wife and I are married, but we have no kids. And
Did you meet your wife there, or did you guys go there together?
we actually met at University of Virginia and
Okay.
then moved to China together.
Okay.
But yeah, like, I mean, I was really into punk rock, screamo, hardcore music in college. Had a very hippie, not type A vibe. I was often not wearing shoes.
Not a lawyer vibe.
No. And I think like people who knew me in that stage, I think can make a lot more sense of my life because there was a very like high EQ, spontaneous, definitely like strong, I think, leadership qualities, but just not a corporate lawyer writer on nonfiction, like Christian habits. And a lot of the shift in my life that has happened is part intentional, part realizing that I think I won't be the fullness of who God made me to be until I embrace both sides of my brain and both sides of like a structured and a spontaneous life, but also through necessity of how difficult my mental health became when I became a lawyer. I had to find the wisdom of habit out of necessity.
Yeah.
And so maybe, I don't know, maybe that's a little vignette. Like there's pictures of me circulating on social media and other places of like, oh, wow, he looks quite different then. But, yeah, so maybe that's one little vignette.
Yeah, that's really neat. It makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like I have a little more context. This is something we didn't mention, but something that kind of goes along with habits of the household, something that's been circling my personal community and impacting me. And like even my brother will like this because he listens to the podcast. Shout out, Casey. He sent me in, I don't remember when it launched, Justin, but August or July, he sent me this podcast, Intentional Fatherhood. And he was like,
Yeah.
man, his buddy Austin sent this to him, and I think you guys align a lot, and I think you should check it out. I think it would be encouraging for you to listen to. And I was like, you're never going to believe this, but we're talking to that guy next month. And
That's great.
And I know in listening to the very first episode, Vice and Isolation, from that, I heard some of that story of like how your mental health impacted you, especially during that season, kind of the early professional season and early fatherhood season. And how did that end up in places, which I think goes along with your new book, What the Body Teaches the Soul.
Yes.
I'm curious. The introduction, the tagline of the book is pretty awesome. How a lawyer who cared only about the life of the mind began to realize he had a body.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about that subtitle?
I now call this my second testimony because it's informed so much of my life ever since. I began walking with Jesus like really in late high school, early college, but I walk with him a very, very different way 10 years since this collapse. So what happened was, in the movement from being a missionary in China to being a corporate lawyer, I maintained a great worldview, but I assimilated to all the typical habits and practices of modern lawyering. Technologically speaking, always being tethered to my device. Physically speaking, always, shorting sleep, skipping meals. Relationally speaking, relationships begin to get crowded out for more and more work. And none of this seemed that bad or even abnormal at the time because it was so much like what everybody else was doing. And so I didn't entirely notice the water that I was swimming in. I noticed some of it, but I just didn't think that it was a serious or spiritual matter because it wasn't in the worldview realm. It wasn't in the life of the mind. I still believed that my identity was in Christ, that I had a call to law, and those two things were very true. But what began to happen was splits developed in my life. And I now see them as multifaceted. Like there's actually a lot of different ways to look at what happened. But the primary thing that happened to me is that my life began to split in different directions. And before I realized it, that it was happening, it started to have like devastating effects. And so a couple ways to talk about the splits, I think all of which will be useful for this conversation, is I started to develop a head-habit split. So my head was going one way, my habits were going the other. I now see that when that happens, your heart tends to follow the habit, and that actually formation is as important as education. And I was really only focused on the life of the mind education. I also think I was unwittingly, I should have known better, but unwittingly having a sacred secular or spiritual physical split, like as long as these things are right in the mind, as long as I'm saying these things, it doesn't so much matter how I'm living in these things, because I had like a fact value probably distinction where like I value this, but the fact of how I'm living doesn't seem opposed to those values. It's in the realm of neutrality. I would have said a lot more things are neutral. Whereas now I'm like, oh, nothing is ordinary, nothing is neutral. Like all the ordinary things are extraordinary. And one of the things I now realize was also true is that there was a upper brain, lower brain split. I was thinking a lot about, and these kind of merge all this together, right? I was thinking a lot about the correct ways to view the world, but because my habits and practices were moving in an entirely different direction, I now see that when I say the heart follows the habits, what happened was like my gut, my feeling, my literal like lower body or parasympathetic nervous system was devolving like into what eventually became panic attacks, insomnia, and even for a short while, suicidal thoughts, because it all got so out of whack, and I was trying sleep meds or other medications to try to like help myself, and those were much more like the symptoms on the back of the bottle to me than anything that was actually helpful. So I had just a really, really dark period of everything falling apart, and it was awful. I mean, it was truly awful. And when I say dark period, it was at least a year of like a very, very difficult dark period. And then really 2 to 3 years of recovering.
Can I ask when that was?
That was when I was turning 30.
Okay.
So I would say like the year 30, I remember like being like, I thought I would be throwing a huge birthday party for myself turning 30. And I remember I was actually just like too emotionally stunted to really enjoy anything. I remember not being able to sleep that night, and my early 30s. And I think another dimension of what was happening, Jamie, that we actually talk about on the Intentional Fatherhood podcast, I see now, is that I had spent a decade getting my life together only to realize that I was now giving it all away. And I think men used to have midlife crises. We think of like our dad's generation or their father's generation, where they realize maybe sometimes in their 40s or 50s that it's like the road they've been traveling down and running so hard in is maybe not the right road at all. And like, what am I doing? Oh, like my legacy. I think I meet a lot more people now having early life crises, and I'm one of them, where they realize they've gotten all their life together. They've made these big decisions only to realize that life is quite a bit harder than they thought. And it's actually a lot more sacrificial than they thought. And it's a lot more self-emptying than they thought. And the way that Brooke and I and the Intentional Fatherhood podcast have been talking about this is you get your life, you have a season of getting your life together, and it's the right thing to do. But if you don't know that all of that is for giving it away, then you get really shocked. And I think all those dimensions were happening. And so I could speak honestly and earnestly about any of them, but the most interesting one to me in the second half of my 30s, so I'd now just turned 40, and I would say, Blake and Jamie, the last 5 years for me have been characterized with a deep fascination with how physical rhythms, and I'm talking exercise, eating, sleeping, breathing, meditation, like literally what you would think of as wellness hacks, have been far more spiritual than I ever thought, far more important to getting myself out of the anxiety loops that I was in. And they've been far more formative and fruitful than I ever thought. And so a lot of my thought work has been just asking the question, what is a truly Christian theology of the body? why do these things matter so much? How can we take them out of the realm of wellness and life hacks and into the realm of ancient Christian rooted and body spirituality to see that this is not woo-woo, this is not psychobabble, this is how God made you, like the physical matter. So that split has become the most interesting to me as of late.
Yeah, and I would imagine that we have a number of listeners who like are definitely curious about all the things we talk about. I mean, we just had a somatic experiencing practitioner on, like we were telling you, and our friend Thomas, cardiologist, just came on, and there are definitely some things that we talk about that I would imagine with, the way that their spirituality was formed might feel really out of the box. And so even to hear you say that may feel pretty comforting to them, that like if that's how you feel, you're not alone. Which is something I've loved that you and Brooke have said on intentional fatherhood, is like, if you're hearing all these things, it's not because you're bad. You are definitely not alone.
Yes.
And like I mean, as therapists, Blake and I have some bias towards being bought in towards things that I guess feel a little more woo-woo. But certainly, like, what I'm curious, like, what drove the shift? You talk about all this is happening at 30. What takes you then to mid-30s? Like, how do you get from like, okay, I noticed this is all, I'm at what another guy who came on named Caleb Campbell, what he would call like a threshold.
Yes.
I'm at this threshold of 30. I feel, I think the word you've used on your podcast is like deteriorating in some ways. How do you go from there to like mid 30s and being like, oh, what tools and resources are working for me?
So for me, there was a process, and the first stage of it was recovering spiritual disciplines and realizing how much habit drives identity growth and spirituality. So a good example of that would be, I started to realize how important technology habits were to my mental health. So I was moving from a place of, well, I know the truth. Why isn't it sinking down? As in like a top-down sort of frontal lobe way of solving the problem. And you encounter that. I mean, even with, therapists, as I'm sure you guys know, you encounter part of life that is true. It's just not the only truth, which is you need to know truth. Like, you need to be told the right things to believe. Otherwise, if you believe wrong things about the world, your body, mind, and soul will go haywire, right? I just thought that was it, right? So I was like, I believe the right things about the world. Why are my body, mind, and soul still going haywire? And one of the things that I realized was, you can believe a lot of right things about the world, but if you are scrolling your phone first thing in the morning, you are at a gut level asking your phone questions that you think are, what do I need to do today? But it's actually beneath the radar at a gut heart level. It's like, who do I need to become today? Is the world going to be okay today? It's not like what's going on out there. It's like, am I going to find a place for my life out there? And, ask Twitter that question, and it's unsurprising you're an angry person. Ask Instagram that question, it's unsurprising you're a self-conscious person. Ask your inbox that question, and it's unsurprising that you begin to put your identity in work, because the question becomes, who do I need to make happy today in order to be worth it? And so my early 30s, Jamie, was characterized by starting to realize the wisdom of the spiritual disciplines in training your heart and mind and body and soul. And I'm going to use all these words. Like, I have actually specific definitions in the way that I think about them. But what I mean is, I was so limited to thinking about correct thinking and correct worldview. And the spiritual disciplines helped me realize that pairing correct worldview, good head, good head thinking with good heart habits was the way that God made us to live. And this is why so much of historical Christianity has been very embodied in their habits, very ordered in their liturgies of life. It was me that was ahistorical. It was our moment that was unusual, that was trying to say, we don't need these forms, as long as you are believing the right thing, do it any way you want. Grace allows you that. That doesn't mean it's wise. So this was the first movement, okay? In tandem with that, I'm starting to think about why so many of these things that I'm doing were so physical. So what fasting was one of the things that was one of the spiritual disciplines that was really changing my mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly there's a biblical paradigm for it, but it did seem a little odd. Like, why is just simply not eating mattering so much? I started to do a lot of kneeling prayers. It became the way that I could, and I wrote in my first book, like, in order to get the attention of my heart, I feel like I need to get the attention of my body. So I was kneeling, not because I thought God would
That's
hear
good.
me more. It's because I wanted to be there more, you know?
Yeah,
Oh,
tomatoes.
that's
And
good.
as I started to like, I just started to wonder, like, why is this all mattering so much? And then in my mid 30s, right at the age of like 34 or 35, I can't remember, I started to exercise consistently every day. This was like a first for me as a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And then things began to radically change. And I was like, huh, I think that there's a lot more to habit that I haven't explored yet. And that is the idea that I knew that I was trying to work with the lower brain and not just engage the upper brain in worldview truth, but work in the lower brain in the, like a gut sense of habit, like where you're moving in all the places you're not thinking, you're just conscious. And I started to realize, oh, this is an embodied reality. This is an embodied reality. This is a brain function. What else is here? And this led me to years long research and practice. Like, I'm like experimenting as much as like in the lab of my body as I am reading. And I could tilt the camera and show you like my stack of like books.
Oh
here.
my gosh.
And I just started to realize I don't have a working theology of the body. And that's not good, because God made me with a body on purpose. What does it mean? And so this is like, this is all the body teaches the soul is that. It's to give you a working theology of the body along with, and I say working because there's a rich theology of the body there that I can explain if you want, but it's a working one because every chapter gives you one spiritual discipline and one physical discipline to put into practice. Because my theory on this is, of course, this is not just meant to be read about. This is meant to be lived.
Yeah.
So how would you do it?
Yeah. That's so good. I'm so excited for this book. I would say most of our listeners are like 25 to 65, I believe, Jamie.
That's a pretty broad range.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. And a lot maybe in that like 30s to 40s range, I would say. And this Jamie and I, like, we're both in our early 30s. And I was actually literally just this morning was doing one of my morning habits that I try to do of journaling and just like getting connected to myself in the morning and not rushing straight to doing all the things. And for some reason, I just started thinking about one of the things that my mentor, my spiritual director, said to me in passing nonchalantly a few months ago that like kind of was a punch in the gut and a hug at the same time. We were having coffee because I'm in my early 30s. So I'm in that building stage, building my career, building my family, kind of trying to build but not fully control like the life that I want to live, the legacy, all of those things. And I can often be that word that we always like to use, too busy.
Yeah.
There's always something to do. And I have a toddler now. So and we sat over coffee for like an hour and a half maybe, and I'm probably just like venting about the things that stress me out and who I want to be and how I'm not there and how I don't have time. And, you know, he's doing all the stuff that he usually does that's really helpful for me. But we were leaving, we put our coffee stuff up and we're walking out the door, and he just very nonchalantly said, you know, you're not in a hurry. And I was like, what do you mean I'm not in a hurry? It feels like I'm in a hurry. And so as I'm hearing you talk about this kind of place that you found yourself in your early 30s and thinking about a lot of our listeners and this grind of like building and doing. And I also realized for myself, which I'm sure you integrate in the book, of like part of me being in that place and always rushing and always doing and having a hard time slowing down is like, I and a lot of our listeners have had some complex like relational and developmental trauma, especially from the people that were supposed to care for them. And what we know about trauma is the way that it disconnects us from our body because it's not safe to be
Right.
in the body,
Right.
especially if you're with somebody who doesn't know how to care for your body and you don't have the ability or agency to do that as a young kid. So becoming disconnected from the body
Yes,
actually
right.
becomes safe.
Right.
And so to be busy and to hurry and to like check my phone first thing in the morning,
It's
at
a
least
great
for
way to get disconnected from your body.
yeah. And
Yeah.
because to slow down,
Mm-hmm.
it's like being disconnected from my body
Yes.
actually kept me safe.
Yes.
And one of the most helpful things for me in this healing process has been, I can very easily go to the place of feeling shame, like doing habits from a place of shame. Like,
Yeah.
I need to integrate these habits, but the intention or the starting point is from shame, which, surprise, surprise, doesn't actually allow the habits to stick because I'm doing them from this place. But when I can have some kindness to myself and even to my body of like, yeah, the ways I've disconnected from my body have been my nervous system just trying to like keep me safe and protected. Then my intention of starting to implement these habits and engage with my body and learn what my body's teaching me comes from a very different place.
Yeah. I really like one of the pinpoints that you're like pushing on there of, I think we disconnect from our bodies in part to feel safe, feel better. I've often talked about the habit of turning your phone off for an hour each day. This was a habit in my very first book, The Common Rule, that I still talk about a lot. And I tell people that not just because healthy technology practices return us to presence, but I actually think the feeling of panic that you have when you literally turn your phone off, and I'm actually saying like, hold those side buttons for an eternity until it asks you like, are you dying or do you actually want to turn me off? And you swipe the off button, and this is a practice that I really encourage people to, because you will encounter a panic attack, a small one, most likely, when you do this, because you'll be like, you'll think it's, oh, I'm unreachable, or what's going on out there and I don't know. But
what if somebody needs me?
Yeah. Which are all minor truths, but the fundamental truth that these revolve around is this is what it feels like to face your mind for the first time in a long time. And it's scary up there, which is why you distract yourself so much. It's also what it feels like to face your body for the first time in a long time. We might not be comfortable in what it's actually trying to tell us.
Yeah.
And so we escape. And that movement from saying, what I need to stop and slow down, end the hurry so that I can face my mind and my body for the first time in a long time, is extraordinarily difficult and scary for most people. And I will grant you that. It's also just the most important thing that you need to do in your whole life. There's this other part of it. It's like, this is also the way to health, the way to mental health, the way to sanctification, the way to service. And that really, Blake, is kind of the working theory of the whole book. So if you look at The Body Teaches the Soul, I arrange it in chapters of breathing, thinking, eating, sleeping, sickness, exercise. I could go on. There's 10, but each one of them, the subtitle is 10 habits to form a healthy and holy life. So breathe deeply, garden the mind, fast and feast, embrace rest, exercise discipline. It's the exercise chapter. Lament brokenness. Each one of these has a physical and a spiritual discipline attached to it. But if you think about those titles, like breathe deeply, garden the mind, embrace rest, what you're hearing in each one is a kind of surrender to the limitations of your body that will actually give you the flourishing of your life. Because one of the things that we have done in modern life is started to assume that we're more like machines than human beings. And that might be like pithy. It's like, oh yeah, that sounds right. But there's a much deeper thing here. A machine is something that you can tinker with. And as long as it's plugged into a fuel or electricity source, there's no real reason it can't always operate. So we think of our bodies as machines that we can life hack, figure out, understand enough to just sort of like churn productivity all the time. But what we actually are is created human beings with features, not flaws, features of a need for rest, features of a need to eat, features of a need to integrate your mind into what I would call shalom, which is the complex integration of disparate parts into a beautiful, flourishing whole. And, psychiatrists and neurologists will talk to you about the disintegration as the sort of the fundamental thing that's happening in mental unhealth. Like, it's kind of hard to define. Like, what is mental health? Like, what is a flourishing mind? I think the Bible describes it actually really well when you talk about shalom. But that means that we have like calls to integration, calls to rest, calls to limitation, which are obviously antithetical to the American idols of freedom and productivity and value creation. So this whole thing is about the movement of Christ, where to say you have to go down before you go up. You have to go through limitations before you get to glory. You have to come through sacrifice before you get to abundance and the gift of good life. And so all of these things are actually going to ask you to do, Blake, what I think your friend sort of asked you to do at the door. And it's a reminder of like, hey, there's a ordered pace of creation that you might want to pay attention to. You're not in a hurry. Or if you are, it's why you feel like you do. And it's why it'll never work.
It's interesting too, because even like I noticed it in myself earlier, and I'm not trying to say this is a wrong phrase, but I have like pushback to it of the idea of getting your life together, because what you're saying, I fully agree with that. Like, even the fear you said, like, this is a very scary thing to come to the point where you can engage with your body. But that fear is like a friend. Chip Dodd would say that fear is a friend there waiting to show you your limitation and your need for help.
Yeah. Wow. I like that way of putting it. Yeah.
And so like the idea, I'm really big into the idea of gardening right now. Like a spiritual practice I'm doing lately is part of pursuing like identity and listening to God's voice. And the identity that I heard spoken over me was gardening. And then I listened to your podcast about gardening, and it was just like, I'm like feeling a little wild right now.
I love this.
But the idea being like, what if the act of getting your life together is not about you getting anything together, but the surrendering to the gardening process happening? Because it allows you to not be in a hurry because you're not going anywhere. You're letting go of the things as you are. And so it's not in the attempt to attain anything, but to let go of the weeds and the soil that's not enriching.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to dive in here because I think yes and. So the reason the gardening metaphor has been so helpful to me is because I both think it explains what exactly we're talking about when we talk about shalom in the body and creation. And it also, I think, solves the apparent paradox of grace and effort. So let me try to like say, because there is a letting go in the grace, but there is a call to effort in the garden. And so here's what I mean. I'm going to run through a couple quick paradigms, and then you guys can pick anyone you want.
Please do.
You have two constant errors of the body. On the one hand, you can ignore it. On the other hand, you can idolize it. But what we were made for is to image God through it. Okay, so Gnosticism would be the philosophical error of like, actually, this physical world doesn't matter. Everything really important is spiritual. Materialism would be the error of idolizing the body. You rarely meet a philosophical materialist actually, because it makes so little sense of the world. But you often meet people who are vain or obsessed with their body, or just like longevity or health. They're stuck in the mirror of body image, the mirror of how the world is, rather than the cracked mirror or the window of like, oh my gosh, there's so much more than I can see to my body in the world. Okay, so you have these twin poles, and you can overlay on top of that a gardening metaphor, where on the one hand, you could assume that you have no role in the garden. This is just like materials in creation, and they will be what they will be. A chemical view of the brain is like this, where it's like, I can tinker around the edges, but either I won the dopamine lottery or not. Like, it's going to be what it is. Or you can have an overly confident view of your body, like I can make it anything I want, like an overestimation of your agency. And this is where gardening, I think, solves so many problems. I'm not even a gardener, right? Like I like, it's like I've had a garden before. Like I couldn't say that I'm an avid gardener. I just know what any farmer knows, and that is, if you don't do anything, you get either a jungle or a desert, right? And you got two options, but you'll either get a jungle that chokes itself and becomes a very dangerous place, or a desert that just dies. That's what happens when we don't do anything. But humans were called to cultivation. Like the idea that we were given something unfinished in our bodies in the world, which is not even the product of sin in the Garden of Eden. It's just unfinished. We're called to cultivate. But on the other hand, any farmer that thinks that he's totally in control of the harvest is like, will quickly be humbled with, oh my gosh, there's weather. Oh my gosh, this soil is not like that soil. And anybody who thinks carefully of their body will think, well, the exercise works this way for that person, but I have all these injuries, and like meditation works this way for that person, but I have all these traumas. And yeah, we have different soils, we have different weather patterns, we have different blights and droughts. And yet the call of any gardener is to say, I will actually take effort, knowing that I can't earn the result. Dallas Willard put it like this: the gospel is opposed to earning, not to effort. And I think the gardening metaphor gives you this beautiful paradigm of grace and agency at the same time, where you have something to do. Like I would tell anybody struggling, I often tell people, this is the book I wish I could have handed myself at 30, because I wish I had a paradigm of agency and grace that would have helped me realize, Justin, it's not legalistic to start Sabbathing, like as a real rule. Like, you need the help to rest. It's not legalistic to start doing scripture before phone as a rhythm. You need the help. But also, like, the sobriety of saying you are not stuck with the mental health you have, and yet it's going to change at the pace of a garden, not a computer. Like, if you're serious about this project, you've got to cultivate this thing for years. To me, that is now the best news I've ever heard, because I want to tell anybody with trauma, anybody with addictions, anybody with mental health patterns, that you're working alongside the master gardener named Jesus, who knows what shalom looks like. He's also the one who talks at the pace of a garden. Like, he's also the one who talks in parables of mustard seeds. Like, you will not believe how much growth he wants to do in your life. You will also not believe how slow it will be.
You're right.
But it's so hopeful. And I think when I talk about breathing or exercising or sleeping or spiritual disciplines of praying or meditating and journaling, I'm talking about gardening work that is real and slow.
Yeah. That is really helpful. I don't think I've heard the way I experienced all of what you said, the clarity and the value of importance of both the action, kind of the way I'm reflecting it, like the action that it takes and the surrendering that it takes. Like both, at least that's the way I'm hearing you say it, is like both are true, both are important.
Yes.
And honestly, like both involve intentional willingness. Like I have to surrender to love, but it still is an action to surrender. I can't just wait until surrender happens to me, at least in my experience.
Yeah, and actually, just jump in for 1 second. I don't mean to interrupt, Blake, but
go for it.
One of the reasons I'm so amped now about a good theology of the body is because I've realized spirituality is actually very hard to understand until you look closely at biology. Like, theology is abstract until you look closely at physicality and biology, and there suddenly it makes total sense. Here's 2 examples. You can farm and till the ground and you can water it. A seed sprouting has been and forever will be an actual miracle, an actual grace of, like, why does it work again? No one can call it forth except God alone. You can break down your muscles in exercise. You can feed it good food. You can lay down to rest. Whether you sleep or not, and anybody who struggles with insomnia knows this, is a complete grace. Whether your muscles knit back together is a complete grace. And anybody with autoimmune diseases or health problems knows this. All over creation, we see places where agency and effort are real, and grace nonetheless is more real and more true. And so it is in your spiritual life. You can do all the things, but if you think you are the one restoring mental health to your soul, you're as foolish as the person who thinks you knitted your muscles back together. No, you did the work that you were called to do, but there is always grace. And this, to me, knits together, I think, so much of the confusion that we have around agency and effort, around doing things or letting go. And it's why, Jamie, I think, like, pulling back to stages of life, you can see stages now intertwined of you truly are called. And I especially think any man or young man listening, it's like there's a reason you feel like you want to conquer the world and get things together. That's not bad. Like, it's not bad. It's good that you want to get your life together. But if you don't pair that with the miracle and the grace of, like, because you're called to give it all away, and you're learning to surrender is as important as you're learning to take agency, then you won't understand the integration of life as Jesus calls you to live it. But when you get that, you really get the way the world works. And I mean biologically and theologically.
Yeah. I think even
good.
it resonates with me about, like, I feel what you are saying as part of maybe what helps 12-step work. It's like, it's a surrender to step in the door. And, like, you are letting things go, so many things go, by going to a newcomer's 12-step meeting.
Yes.
And it requires a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that whole requirement, I guess what I was even saying with, like, the continual surrender, as much as it is like you are manufacturing this new, you are getting the things together, as you're saying. As much as it is that, for me, it's been a continual process of, like, I recognize through my willingness to work that this is another thing I need to surrender. Like,
yes. Amen. Yes.
Yeah.
it's like most of my work has come to an incredible awareness of how selfish I am. And also, like you're saying, how much of a gift grace is.
Yes.
That, like, I am a seed that's sprouting.
Yes.
What a miracle.
Yes. A seed has to die, before it sprouts is
It doesn't make
the
sense.
wildness of the world, even, how it seems how God made it. And I often think about how kintsugi pottery, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but it's the Japanese art, of breaking the bowl and then mending it back together with gold is some of the best. They're some of the best metaphors to understand life, because wherever you see brokenness, God sees a place that will be more beautiful after the grace and the work is done. And I remember I went to Baptist churches growing up, and the idea of come just as you are, was abounding in the altar calls, like surrender, like come. And it's so true. It's also true that Jesus says, he'll find you wherever you are and however you are, but he will never leave you. However you are, he's always calling you forward. There's always a call from grace. And Paul is super clear on this, in Romans. He's super clear on the apparent paradox of it too, that, does that mean that sin should increase because grace abounds? And he's like, no, of course not. But what does that look like in real life? Well, that's what we're wrestling around in this conversation. It is this ever perplexing process to humans of surrendering in order to work, dying in order to gain, giving up in order to have and hold in the first place. And I think all of what I'm saying is that strangely paying more attention to my body has helped me apprehend what exactly those words mean in theory.
Yeah, come on.
That's beautiful. We're talking a lot about surrender. We've been talking about it a lot in the last few minutes. I want to read something really fast. I think I read this, Jamie, when we were talking to Thomas, but it's I'm rereading David Benner's Surrender to Love, if you've read that.
I haven't read that, but I've read passages of Benner in many places.
Yeah. The Gift of Being Yourself is another popular one he had. But Surrendering to Love is all about like surrendering to the love of God. And there's this one excerpt he has just been like really stewing in me. I've shared it with Jamie, and it came up again as we're talking about surrender. He says, think for a moment about how Christ, because I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, Justin.
Yeah,
He
I'm
says,
ready.
think for a moment about how Christ following develops if you assume God looks at you with disgust, disappointment, frustration, or anger. The central feature of any spiritual response to such a God will be an effort to earn approval. Far from daring to relax in his presence, you will be vigilant to perform as well as you possibly can. The motive for any obedience you might offer will be fear rather than love, and there will be little genuine surrender. Surrendering involves relaxing, and you must feel safe before you can relax. How could anyone ever expect to feel safe enough to relax in the presence of a God who is preoccupied with their shortcomings and failures? And even as I'm rereading that, it's like my daughter hopefully experiences me as, if I'm going back to his language, as somebody safe with whom she can relax in and surrender to in that sense. And hopefully as she gets older, she has the experience from me that I am not preoccupied with her shortcomings and failures. Although I'll probably make her feel that way sometimes because
that was such a delightful way
I'm
of
a
putting
human.
it. Yeah.
But as I'm also realizing this, like, I know that as hard as I try with her, there are going to be moments where, or I'll just apply it to myself. I know my mind that God is not preoccupied with my shortcomings and failures. And to think what I'm realizing as we're talking about all of this is sometimes or Jamie, I know that Jamie is not, as my friend, preoccupied with my shortcomings and failures, and that if I surrender myself to my relationship with him as a friend and honesty, that I'll receive the grace and love that I want.
Yeah.
But sometimes I don't get there before I choose the act of surrender. Like I still fear that he might be obsessed with my shortcomings and failures, but I still have to take the risk of choosing the act of surrender and then hopefully experience the love and the grace. So I don't know. I'm just curious your initial thoughts on that, because we're talking a lot about surrender right now.
It's a beautiful way of putting it. I think preoccupation with your flaws and failures is actually just a wonderful phrase to carry forward and remind yourself that it's the opposite of who God is. I think there's a reason that the idea of Jesus being gentle and lowly, the book by that title, has sold so well in our modern moment, because I think people are shocked to be reminded that Jesus's yoke is easy and his burden is light, because we feel the incredible burden of modern life.
Yeah.
There's a reason we're all answering the question, how are you with I'm busy? One of the central features of our age, and it's been like this before we were born, it'll probably be like this after we die. This is a moment of history that we live in. So we've got to wrestle with our time. And the Bible speaks to so many things, but one of the things that really speaks to our time is that Jesus is an easy master. His yoke is easy, his burden is light, and that he invites you into what he calls the kingdom, closely related to the idea of shalom. It's like the flourishing that is knit back together in the good, in the good life and the world made new. And like what I think about that when you read it is the way that children teach us this as parents. And I think it's actually quite related to what we were just talking about, honestly, because it's a movement from like grace to call. It's a movement from this yoke is easy. It is a yoke.
Yeah.
What do we mean by that? Jesus I actually repeat this at the end of every single chapter in The Body Teaches the Soul. Like every chapter has a visual summary of like the ideas that I'm talking about, let's say with breathing or thinking. But each one has 2 lines at the end. It says, habits won't change God's love for you, but God's love for you should change your habits. So
Ooh.
like this is not about legalism. This is about an invitation to a beautiful way of life. And then
Golly.
there's a little section below that, like right below it, where it'll say, his yoke is easy, his burden is light. You probably shouldn't try all these ideas at one time. Pick one. Like I'm
Dude,
trying
that's
to give you
so
tons of
good.
ideas, like a menu. But anybody who's been in a restaurant knows, like, order everything on the menu and you will be very sick.
Yeah.
Order a couple
'Cause-
things and you might be very fulfilled.
Yeah.
So that
Hmm.
I'm trying to remind people constantly that our motivation is love. And the way of going into that love is slow and limited and one thing at a time, like we do with children. But also think about this, like when we're teaching our children to walk, we are not preoccupied with their failures and flaws. We are overjoyed that they're trying anything in the first place.
Yeah, let's go.
Like, how do they look when they learn to walk? Like, they do it very badly. They're very poor. If I were to grade them, it would be very, very like failure every time.
Yeah.
And G.K. Chesterton says the most beautiful thing. He says, something worth doing is worth doing badly. Because you can't say that if grace is not real. But in the economy of Christ, things are worth doing even if badly, because Jesus is an easy master. But if you don't get that he's actually the Father calling you forward, he's actually the Father teaching you, he's actually the Father saying, come be challenged. You might fall, but keep looking up at me. I'm smiling. Why?
Yeah.
Why does he want to do this? Why doesn't he just leave us where we are? Like, we know if we had a handicapped child or a sick child, we would love them just the same. We'd smile just the same, because Jesus actually has an interest in our thriving, in our shalom. He actually wants us, like we want our children to grow up into something they are not yet. Like, he's interested in us experiencing the beauty of a flourishing life. He wants to call us forward, not because it's like, prove to me you can do it. No, he's going to love us wherever we are. But consider the astounding fact that he loves you so much that he wants you to be healed. Like, he doesn't want you to stay in your trauma and identify with it and be like, I'm always talking about this because this is true in my life. He looks at people and he's like, do you want to be well? Do you want to be well? Because I would actually like to do that for you. That's when the kingdom of God comes. As it turns out, people everywhere are made well. This is what I'm about in life. Would you like to be made well? And some of us don't. Some of us would rather kind of stay in the identification with all our messiness, because we don't really fully realize the grace and the beauty that he calls us out of love. There's nothing to earn, but he actually does want us to be made well.
Golly, that's beautiful. And I like that you made the distinction about, like, just try one. Like, when you're seeing your kid start to walk, you're not also expecting them to be able to run a mile now.
Yeah, or ride a bike, because we're doing one thing at a time.
Well, even like to your point about gardening, not everything can be planted in every season.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
There you go. Yeah.
If you take one of them,
Right.
flourish it.
See, I told you, once we get to our time, we're going to be like, I wish we had another hour.
Maybe some point I can come to Nashville. We could do it in person, and
let's
That'd
do
be
it.
awesome.
I want to share one quick, if you have time, I want to share one quick story for you. It's not really for our listeners. I guess it might be, but it's because Jamie kind of stole my spotlight in the beginning of telling a story about his brother, because I promised my brother I would tell this story, and I haven't even told Jamie yet. Quick summary. I have a sister who's 9 years younger than me and a brother who's 11 years younger than me. And they live in different states, same parents. Parents divorced when I was in high school, so my siblings were really young.
Okay.
I've been essentially estranged from my dad for probably 5 years. And it doesn't, although I'm still holding on to hope, repair doesn't seem anywhere close. And sadly, it's turned out to be a similar story for my siblings as well. And we haven't really got to talk about that much just due to the age gap and life. And we're kind of getting to the place now where we are starting to have even just a little bit more of this sibling relationship that I think all of us, the three of us, deeply yearn for, even though there's still like more that we yearn for. So last week, my brother, who's like just fresh out of high school, calls me or texts me and asks me to chat with him. And we don't talk super frequently, maybe see him a couple times a year. And he told me I could share this. And he, long story short, just went into this whole thing about how like he listens to our podcast, and he told me like, I've just been, I think because I listened to your podcast, like this other podcast, I guess, showed up on my feed. And so I started listening to this one called Intentional Fatherhood. And I was like,
awesome.
Dude, we're going to interview Justin in a couple of weeks. And he was like, what? But he was like, I started listening to this, and it's not even because I'm like thinking about wanting to be a dad anytime soon, but it's like just listening to it has helped me even connect with like some of my pain around relationship with our dad, which is like first time he said something like that to me. And then he was like, and also like, I have some fear of saying this, but like, I'm sad about where our relationship is. And like, I want it to be closer, and I don't really know how to do that, but I'm at least just saying that here's my desire. And I'm like kind of nervous to say it. And a huge portion of that was because of whatever God was stirring in his heart as a result of starting to listen to y'all's podcast. And so I told him, I was like, I've got to tell Justin that.
I am so glad you did. I can't wait to send this to Brooke so he can listen to it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why we're doing this kind of stuff.
The kinds of things that I want to happen through intentional fatherhood, or really any of my writings.
Yeah.
It would be that. What's your brother's name?
Frankie.
God bless you, Frankie. I hope you hear this, brother. Keep doing the good work.
He will. Thank you. And you keep doing what you're doing, because it has been a blessing to so many, and really grateful that you take the time out of your probably busy schedule to have this conversation.
Yeah.
There you go.
Flourishing.
Flourishing.
Lots of disparate parts trying to come together and be made whole.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Justin, where can people find the book? Because it's out by the time this podcast comes out.
It's out.
Go get
As
it.
you hear this, it's out. There's 3 things I would love for anyone to do. And one is go get a copy. I wouldn't have written this. It takes years to write a book. Okay. It takes a ton of time. It's kind of complicated. I would not have done through this if I didn't think actually long form engaging with these ideas is going to change your life. And I say that more as like, hopefully to be helpful, not egomaniacal, like, buy my book, it's going to change your life. I wouldn't have written it if I didn't think so. So I'd love for people to go get a copy. It's going to help you walk you through all these places of the body and think about growing your spirituality there. You can also go to my website at justinwhitmelearley.com. And from there, joining my email list is a great way to keep in touch in like that medium form. I'd like send emails to people about what I'm thinking about, articles I write. And I do post on Instagram. You can find me there. That's the short form stuff. I believe there is a place for it, but I'm all about moving up the ladder of embodiment, like less social media, more long form reading, more hangouts, more calls, more bonfires. But I got touch points on all. So find me on Instagram, email list, listen to the podcast, Intentional Fatherhood. But if I could wish anything for you, it'd be like grab a book, sit down, annotate it, watch your life get changed.
Yeah. I know Blake and I will both be getting it. So really
100%.
excited, man. This is awesome.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited we know each other, and I look forward to the next conversation.
Yeah.
Same here.
We'll have a bonfire hang next time you're in Nashville.
Yeah.
Let's go. Sounds great.
Well, to everybody listening, we're glad you're here. Keep coming back. You're worth it.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to another episode. Listen, we're working on some really practical resources to help you connect more deeply with yourself and others. So if you head over to our website, 3percentco.com, you can learn more about that. The link will be in the show notes. And this is the part of the show where we ask you for some help. Listen, we don't have a big fancy production team. We're recording these in my therapy office in between sessions and in the margins of our life. We just really believe in the message that much. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and rarely would I take the time to review and rate a show, just because honestly, I forgot. It wasn't until we started doing this show that I realized doing that actually really does help these platforms notice our show and get the word out. So if any of this is impactful to you, we would love it if you took a second to leave us a review, rate us, or if you want to just do it the old-fashioned way, text this link to a friend and say, hey, let's talk about this episode. Whatever you do, make sure to follow us on whatever platform you're listening to so you never miss an episode. We're really grateful you're here, and we'll see you next week.
So let's be honest. So let's be honest.